Behind the Throne: How Game of Thrones Changed Television Forever. Before Game of Thrones, television knew its limits. Stories were predictable. Heroes were protected. Villains were clearly evil. Television shows entertained, but they rarely shocked. They followed rules that had existed for decades. Even popular series were careful not to go too far. Killing main characters was risky. Showing moral complexity was uncommon. Large budgets were reserved for movies, not television. The idea that a TV show could compete with cinema both artistically and culturally seemed unrealistic. Then came Game of Thrones, and television was never the same again. A world that did not promise safety. Based on George R.R. Martin's epic book series, A Song of Ice and Fire, Game of Thrones was built on a dangerous idea. No one is safe. From the very beginning, the show warned its audience. This would not be a story of simple heroes and happy endings. This would be a story of power, ambition, betrayal, and consequence. Unlike traditional fantasy, the world of Westeros felt brutally real. Kings made mistakes, knights broke their vows, leaders were corrupt, emotional, and flawed. Power did not bring peace, it brought danger. This realism shocked viewers. When the first season aired, many people felt confused. There were too many characters, too many locations, too many political conversations. There was no clear main hero. Then something happened that changed television forever. The moment television lost its innocence. When a major character someone audiences believed was central to the story was suddenly executed, viewers were stunned. This did not happen on television. Main characters survived. They always had. But Game of Thrones broke that unspoken rule. It told viewers something terrifying and exciting. Your expectations do not protect you. This moment created fear but also fascination. Suddenly, every scene mattered. Every conversation felt dangerous. Every decision had consequences. This unpredictability became the show's greatest strength. Audiences leaned forward. They paid attention. They stopped multitasking. Watching Game of Thrones required focus, and viewers loved that challenge. Cinema-level storytelling on the small screen. One of the most revolutionary aspects of Game of Thrones was its scale. Before it, television budgets were small compared to films. Sets were limited. Battles were avoided or implied. Game of Thrones changed that completely. HBO invested enormous amounts of money into massive sets, international filming locations, detailed costumes and armor, practical effects and visual effects, large-scale battle scenes. The show was filmed across multiple countries, including Northern Ireland, Croatia, Spain, and Iceland. Each location helped make the world feel authentic and alive. For the first time, a television series looked and felt like a blockbuster movie every single episode. This raised expectations across the entire industry. Complex themes that respected the audience. Game of Thrones did not explain everything. It trusted its audience to think. The show explored themes that television rarely touched at such depth. The corrupting nature of power. Characters who gained power often lost their morality. The cost of ambition. Every climb toward the throne required sacrifice. Moral ambiguity. Heroes committed terrible acts. Villains showed humanity. The fragility of order. Peace was temporary. Chaos was always waiting. There were no perfect leaders. No flawless heroes. Characters were shaped by trauma, loyalty, fear, love, and pride. This complexity made the story feel human. Viewers didn't just watch characters, they debated them. Characters that evolved, not simplified. One of the show's greatest achievements was character development. Characters changed slowly and painfully over time. Innocent characters became hardened. Powerful characters fell. Weak characters rose. Importantly, the show allowed characters to make mistakes and live with the consequences. This realism created emotional investment. Viewers didn't just root for characters, they feared for them. Even unpopular characters were fascinating. Even villains were understandable. This emotional depth was rare on television before Game of Thrones. How Game of Thrones changed viewing culture. Game of Thrones didn't just change storytelling, it changed how people watched television. Episodes became global events. People planned their schedules around new episodes. Friends gathered to watch together. Officers discussed episodes the next day. The internet exploded with fan theories, episode breakdowns, symbolism, analysis, predictions, and debates. Waiting for the next episode became part of the experience. Waiting for the next season became a shared emotional journey. Television was no longer passive entertainment. It became participation. Streaming, binge-watching, and global audiences. Streaming platforms changed because of Game of Thrones. People rewatched episodes to understand details. New viewers binge-watched entire seasons. International audiences grew rapidly. The show proved that audiences would follow complex stories. Non-American stories could dominate globally. Language, accents, and large casts were not barriers. Television became global, ambitious, and competitive. The golden age of television accelerated because of Game of Thrones, the controversial ending, and its aftermath. The final season of Game of Thrones remains one of the most debated endings in television history. Some viewers felt disappointed, others felt confused, many felt emotionally conflicted. Yet even criticism proved the show's power. People cared deeply. They argued passionately. They analyzed every decision. Few shows create that level of emotional investment. Importantly, the ending did not erase the show's impact. The cultural shift had already happened. Television had changed permanently. The industry after Game of Thrones, studios changed their approach. They invested in larger budgets, long-form storytelling, complex characters, darker themes, cinematic visuals. Fantasy and science fiction gained respect. Television writers gained creative freedom. Audiences demanded higher quality. Shows no longer needed to be safe. They needed to be bold. A legacy beyond the throne. Game of Thrones did more than tell a story of kings and queens. It proved that television could challenge audiences intellectually, compete with blockbuster films, shaped global culture, redefined storytelling standards. It turned television into an art form with cinematic power. Final thought: Game of Thrones did not simply entertain, it warned, it challenged, it transformed. It showed the world that stories could be brutal, complex, and unforgettable and still be loved. Television was never the same again.